Yeah, last night for the Cardinals, Sonny Gray, otherwise pitched well. He had like 8 strikeouts through the first 3 innings. Everybody was whiffing against Sonny Gray. And then all of a sudden, some untimely home runs come. Spencer Steer hits that one to put him ahead in the third. And then the very next pitch, Ellie De La Cruz hits out. And Gray had to manage that going forward. And I thought did so to a decent degree, except for, again, when Spencer Steer came back up and hit a 3-run homer with
stop pitching to that guy.
Exactly.
I guess. I don't know.
Walk him, I guess, if there was an open base for Spencer Steer. But, yeah, it's been kind of an issue for Sonny Gray all season long, too, because he didn't give up very many home runs last year in his Cy Young campaign year. He didn't win it, but he was right up against the winner. And this year, what is it, 19 home runs that he's given up, if I'm not mistaken? Or
I think it's 17.
17, okay.
I'm looking at Baseball Reference here.
But still much higher than his number last year.
Yeah, 8. All of last season,
yeah. There you go.
So he's already more than doubled it in 54 fewer innings. So it's been an issue. It's kind of crazy if you look at things like his, fielding independent pitching. 3.15 is only a shade higher than his league-leading mark of 2.83 last year. He's pitched well. He's doing the things that Fipp likes. He's still striking out a lot of guys, as you mentioned. Had 9 strikeouts last night. Was cruising first time through the order when it comes to strikeouts. And then as soon as they turn that lineup back over, he said last night those home runs he gave up in the third inning, the back-to-back to Steer and then Ellie, he said he was really not too displeased with those pitches. He executed them kind of what he was meaning to do, try to bust them in with fastballs, but I don't know, at a certain point, do you maybe become a little too predictable if you're Sonny Gray and you've talked so much about wanting to be in the strike zone and you don't mind being over the middle of the plate? I don't know. He said the pitches weren't so bad. Andy, I went back and watched them, and they really weren't, but it didn't fool anybody, right? And he doesn't have that 96, 98 velocity on his fastball, so as much as I understand wanting to try to bust a guy in, if you're busting him in with 92, 93, 94, if they see it coming, if they're looking and hunting for a fastball first pitch on the inner half, that's what happened with De La Cruz. He got it 94 up and in. I think the other part is, and it's no Cardinal fan's going to like me saying this, but sometimes you can give credit to the other team. And like whoa, hang on. No,
listen,
I don't think it has to happen all the time.
Other teams always worse. It's always the Cardinals' fault when they lose, yes.
But sometimes a freak athlete puts a good swing on you. And I feel like that's what the pitch to Ellie was. It was up and in, pretty good location, but you have to think back previous AB. All right, they've seen you once already. They kind of knew what your tendency was last time. Sometimes I wonder if Sonny gets a little bit one-track minded of, here's what I got to do to be successful, and maybe the Reds were able to jump on him because of tendencies last night, because the pitches in and of themselves in that third inning weren't so bad. But a couple things wrong with it. One, anytime you walk somebody ahead of a home run, it's going to feel a lot worse, and that's what happened. They had a walk in that inning, and then the Steer homer was a multi-run shot as a result. And then if these guys have seen you once and they worked the first time on him, that first inning, he was cruising. They see his second time, you got to make minor adjustments, and I think the Reds were just a little more ready for that second at-bat. And then the third time through, another walk in front of a Steer home run, and he got behind in the count to Spencer Steer. The fifth inning homer, which was a 3-run shot, Steer's second, that was a bad pitch. 92, middle away, just in a 3-1 count. Don't get in the 3-1 count and throw that pitch like something bad's going to happen. And it did. But I'll agree with Sonny Gray. Third inning, I don't know, not the worst pitches, but you can't necessarily look at it in a vacuum. You have to acknowledge some of the things and the tendencies maybe that he has fallen into certain patterns that perhaps hitters are able to take advantage of. And look, I'm not saying I have all the answers, Andy. I'm sitting here on the sidelines, but I do feel like there's got to be something to the fact that if you've given up 17 homers this year and only 8 last year, but all your other underlying peripherals look kind of the same, are you getting a little bit too comfortable in certain tendencies? That would be the only thing I could wonder when it comes to Sonny.
And I'm sure he's maybe recognizing that after this last start. It's maybe a wake-up call, and he goes back and sees where he might be able to tweak things, whether he can use a different pitch in those spots as opposed to what has been his bread and butter. The problem is, if you try to tweak something, does it then affect another part of your game? And then that's going to be the hard line to walk here, is that, okay, if he changes up his pitch selection a little bit more to maybe avoid a lot of those big swings that other players have been getting against him this year, well, then does it take his swing and miss ability away a little bit? Does he get fewer strikeouts because of it? I don't know. I would imagine that Sonny Gray has certainly looked at this year thinking, why am I giving up so many home runs this year? I got to look in the lab.
He's at least wondering it now.
Right. I mean, after a game like this, when the Cardinals, look, I mean, offensively, they were not good yesterday. You can talk about that for sure. They had chances to score. It wasn't just the fact that they had one run on 5 hits. They had several instances early in the game where they...
2 bases loaded. I mean, twice with the bases loaded, they didn't get anything. They had a double play in the second inning and a strikeout in the third to end those threats. And Arenado had the RBI single previous to the bases getting loaded in the third, and that's it. You could say, well, with RISP, hey, Andy, with RISP, they batted 400 yesterday.
I know, right? Great hits with runners in scoring position. One of them, though.
2 for 5.
2 for 5. One of them did not bring in a run, though. Only one of those hits actually brought in a run.
One of them did not leave the infield. It was an infield hit by Goldschmidt
there you go.
to load the bases for Donovan in that third inning.
I mean,
and then the other one being Arenado's single.
So, yeah, I mean that's an issue anyway. And look, we could talk about that, but the fact that Sonny Gray gave up 6 runs in 5 innings, it sets you back. I know the offense is trying to work through things, but it's harder to climb out of that hole when you have those issues come up in certain innings against certain pitchers, and you don't execute the right pitch or whatever it might have been. Because again, he agrees that he made good pitches in the third inning, but clearly they weren't good enough because they were hit out. So, I mean, it's just going to be a little bit of a learning experience, even for a guy like him who's a wily veteran at this point. You still got to find ways to evolve, and this should be a game that wakes him up from that.
Which I don't know if that's because, I mean, after the game, he sounded a little flummoxed and doesn't have a great explanation for the homers. And it's not that this is the first game all season in which he's given up homers. It's been more of a trend. He even said he didn't want to make, excuse about the ballpark, even though I don't think any of the 3 would have been homers at Busch last night. They're at Great American Ballpark. We know the way that tends to go. But he's not one to make that excuse. He said it's not just here. I've been, this has been a trend that he knows he's got to figure out. But when you say wake-up call, it feels like there have been those types of outings before this one on the year for Sonny Gray, and yet, we kind of keep coming back to this point. But that's why I look at it and say if you isolate it down, and this is never the way to do it because you have to look at the results as they happen, but you could isolate it down and say a couple pitches here in that second inning, maybe executed decently, maybe not well considered in the thought process if those batters had reason to believe it was coming because they had faced him the first time. And, if he has so many different pitches, I think just mixing them a little bit more frequently and mixing them on the first pitch, okay, if the pattern is first pitch, fastball in, and you get a little too comfortable in that pattern, kind of going through the motions of it, then batters are going to probably get wise to it and maybe be able to do something about it. And both, the Ellie home run was first pitch, and that was right after the fastball that Steer hit out. One's a righty batter, one's a lefty. But if that's kind of the tendency, I think scouting reports are going to be able to pick up on that. And he throws 5 or 6 different pitches to be able to maybe mix it up a little bit more. And I know he wants to live inside the strike zone because he doesn't want to get into those 3-1 counts like he did to Spencer Steer the second time that he homered. But it's going to have to be a balancing act. I just don't know. I don't know that it's just going to be there's a magic fix to it. Look, he did have 2 good starts in a row before this one. This one was a setback. It coincides on a night where the Cardinals offense was putrid after the third inning. The frustrations are going to be there. Cardinals are just a game above 500. So when you think about playoff implications and where they stand right now, there are teams that we thought were dead and buried, we had forgotten about, that are now kind of peeking up at the Cardinals in the standings, and you're going, wait a minute, I got to think about these teams behind me too. It could absolutely just kind of fall apart on the Cardinals in the weeks ahead if they don't find a way to play just a little bit more consistent in every aspect. But it's the Cubs, it's the Reds. If the Cardinals lose this, if they get swept in this Cincinnati series, they will end the series at 60-61, tied with the Reds. They'll be tied with Cincinnati in the standings. I'm not saying that's going to happen these next 2 days, but look, we've talked about margin for error a lot on this show. Cardinals don't have it. They've got to be good in all the areas of the game because they're not great in any of the areas of the game, and that's got to be a daily mission. Yesterday, failed offensively against another lefty. Jordan Walker was not the boost to the lineup, at least in day one, that they thought he could be against lefties. I do question a little bit what their thought process is. I'm not saying they don't have one, but we talked about reverse splits for Walker. He's actually been better against righties than lefties throughout his career. Do they have reason to believe that that's going to change? I wonder if that's something that, it gets asked and we get an explanation for here soon. But other than that, it's the starting pitching. Yeah, there might be a couple of pitches that you say got away from Sonny Gray. Maybe he largely pitched pretty well because the stuff was good. He struck out 9. That being said, the result is the result, and when you do have those slim margin for error, there aren't that many games left this season where we're going to be able to say, the Cardinals played pretty well, but they got beat. Okay, if it makes you sleep better at night to feel that way about the team, I'm cool with it. But the record's going to be the record at the end of the season, and you're getting to crunch time where they are going to have to make a move sooner rather than later. There's time in the calendar to do it. They could piddle around like this until September 15th and then win 12 in a row and probably be fine. But what about the way we're seeing the Cardinals play right now tells you that 12 or 17 in a row is just around the corner? Don't put all your eggs in that basket. I think now would be the time to start making those incremental gains, winning series, grinding out the sweep that you can here and there, and be able to build in the standings. We're still waiting to see it, and in fact, they're moving in the other direction over the past month.
Yeah, and we all know that there's only one manager that can actually orchestrate those types of winning streaks.
Oh, for the love of all that is holy!
There's no
people love talking about the manager. I know you're joking. I know that's a Mike Schilt. Yeah. And that's what I feel so crummy about, because I think Mike Schilt's a good manager. I always did. And then when the Cardinals hired Ollie Marmol, I said, hey, I think he can be a good manager. I still do. I think it's allowed a lot more than that, but that's always the least common denominator thing that people are going to look at and go, well, Mike Schilt's team is in the wild card. Did you see the Padres? They won 8 of 10. Okay, look at his roster and the way those players are performing. I'm not saying that Ollie is completely absolved of sin when it comes to the underperforming team. I think at the end of the season, you got to look at everything. Turner Ward's got to be, it doesn't, you could say that, well, that's Goldie's guy, that's Arenado's guy. I don't care. If at the end of the season, those guys aren't performing, I'm not saying off with his head. I'm just saying, what is Turner Ward bringing? There needs to be an evaluation of all of these positions at the end of the season if and only if the Cardinals don't make the playoffs. If they come back and they have the season they're hoping to have, then my goodness, they're running a tight ship and everything's fine. But it's not beyond reproach to be able to think, all right, let's look at these guys and are we getting the most out of what we have here as an organization? It is run as a business at the end of the day, and the DeWitts certainly know that. So they're not going to be in a position to get complacent, and you wouldn't think, because they know how important fan support's going to be able to continue the success that they've had for so long and that they're trying to get back to. So I think, look, if this thing goes the wrong way, yeah, they're going to have to look at those elements at the end of the season. But I can look at the players' numbers and tell you why they're not performing, and how much blame do you place on coaching versus development versus, these are veteran players in some instances. Veteran professional players doing their job, right? Because it's on them. The pitching coach didn't tell him to not give up 3 homers. That idiot. No. I understand there's a coach. The role of a coach exists. They should be doing things, but the players also have to perform, and that intersection is not happening. So I absolutely think look at all of it to maybe diagnose and then come up with a solution. But if the Cardinals want to be that organization that they've been for so long, everything does have to get considered. I just tend to lean more away from the easy, did the bullpen blow the game tonight? Manager sucks. I'd rather look at, what are these guys? Why can't they hit with runners in scoring position? Why can't the performers that have been at this level for all of their careers, now they're taking a step back? What's the reason for that? Well, how do we fix it? You can look at some of those things, and that might be the problem, Andy. It might be that you look a little deeper and you go, man, this is kind of organizational function question marks, and those are harder to fix. So you got to just want to, that's why we use the term scapegoat, right? So I don't know. I think there's still hope for the Cardinals, but it's hard to keep singing that song if I keep seeing performances like last night. The calendar will work against them sooner rather than later if they don't kind of start hitting their stride. Yeah,
we'll talk about it a little bit more at 5:05, whether the Cardinals
please God, no.
are lacking
anything but that.
Yeah, exactly.
Talking more Cardinals, you're just begging me to to have
no, it's not just that, but I mean more
blood vessel.
More also into the Royals category because they both have very tough remaining schedules left. So how likely are these teams to withstand that stretch? But I mean, it almost happens after this series for the Cardinals. Like this 3 weeks that they have coming up where they've got nothing but tough teams. They're facing nothing but teams for the next 3 weeks after they finish with the Reds. They're facing teams that are not just in the playoffs, but they've got like separation. Like they're squarely in. They're either leading their division or they've got a several game lead away from a team that's not in the playoffs right now. Like they've got cushions and they've played really well all season long. So, I mean, that stretch is going to tell us a lot about whether the Cardinals actually deserve to be the postseason team that they've been striving to be this year and that everyone's expecting them to be after an awful 2023. Like you had to get back to that mantle this year. And this stretch they have coming up that won't take any longer than a month, just barely under a month, will, I think, tell us how ready they are to take on that stretch.
And like for people that are upset about, if this sounds overly optimistic to say they still have a chance, the good news is we're going to get to see. And then if in a month they've gone through this stretch and they're 4 games under 500, then we're going to know what kind of team they were all along.
Yeah.
But I still am going to give them the benefit of the doubt to play this out. But yeah, they're going to earn it if it happens because the schedule is going to dictate that they will have done some pretty impressive stuff if they're going to find their way in. Because it's tough the rest of the way. It's not a mystery. It never was. We told you it was going to be this way when the Cardinals were going through their easier portion of the slate. We said, hey, this is the time to grab that cushion. This is the time to get ahead because it's going to tighten up toward the end. Well, here we are toward the end. It's about to tighten up. The Cardinals not only do they not have the cushion, they've got a deficit that they're going to have to make up. It can happen, but they're going to have to be the team that they keep telling us they are to be able to do it. Like they're going to end up proving it one way or another.
875 KTGR. Tell us your thoughts on the Cardinals after an opening game loss in the series at Cincinnati. Let's go to Mike here on the KTGR hotline. Mike, what you got?
Hey, guys. I love the fact that you can stay with us. But I thought a couple weeks ago, by the end of this month, the Cardinals would probably be out of it. Like you said, you see the schedule that's ahead for them. When I was working, I was a licensed professional counselor, and one of the things first thing they ever taught me about assessing things is past performance predicts best. Do you think the Cardinals are suddenly going to click on here? This is what they've been. They've been a pretty mediocre team. You've got your two superstars haven't done anything all year. Yeah, they could click in, but if they don't, that's the reason you're not winning. And the other thing I want to say is, with companies and everything else, who do they usually get rid of? The CEO when things aren't going well. So Marmo's job is at jeopardy because why? He's not motivating them. Even if it's not his fault, the fans will come after it. The other thing I want to say about Kansas City, yeah, I was talking to somebody, and Kansas City's like, 11 games over 500.
Yeah.
They played the White Sox, I don't know how many times, They played the worst team in baseball. So they might not be that great of a team after all. They do have maybe the best player in baseball, but that's besides the point.
Right.
That's all I got.
Yeah, I appreciate the call, Mike, here on the Big Show. I mean, let's give them a little more credit than that. They play in the American League. That's a much tougher league than the National League. They've got several more teams that are 10 games over 500. And like, what's the line right now between in the playoffs, out of the playoffs, in the National League? It's like 5-6 games over 500.
Yeah, it's definitely a stauncher league with what they're dealing with in the AL. But to Mike's point, they have beat up on the White Sox, which is not, I don't use that to maybe knock the Royals. It's almost to their credit to say, yeah, like this is the team that you're scheduled to play, whatever it is, 12 times a year in division. And you, by virtue of the games against them, have staked out a pretty nice cushion. But like, it is kind of fair to point out that I don't even think I realize the extent to which the Royals have dominated the White Sox.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and granted, every team that has played the White Sox, other than maybe the Cardinals, have dominated the White Sox.
Yeah, Didn't they lose to the White Sox? They lost 2 out of 3 to them, didn't they?
I think they did. I can't remember. I try to forget those series because I've already got enough that I hear from Cardinals fans about their displeasure with certain things.
Lost it was early May. They lost 2 out of 3 in that series.
Yeah, that was not a pleasant time. Without looking it up on the Royals White Sox, do you know the stat? I think they're done with them for the season. They have played their full scope of games against them.
12, 13 games against them this year?
I think there was a 4-game series and then the others were 3-game series, if I'm not mistaken. So I think they've played them 13 times.
I'm going to say they won 11.
Do you venture a guess?
11 wins.
I think they're 12-1. I'm scrolling through to find it.
Well.
Yeah, they're 12-1 against the White Sox. They're a 500 team. So, Mike, actually, I started out by going, well, I'm going to credit the Royals for, at least taking care of the team that's bad. They're 500 against the rest of the league, though. Does that scare you at all?
Okay, but the Guardians got to play the White Sox and build up their record, and the Twins did too, and all that. So I'm not.
No wonder the AL though. That alone is why the wild card is better in the AL is because all those teams play the White Sox at least 6 times.
Yeah,
that's the reason.
Well,
I didn't even realize this. Mike had a good point though. No, I'm going about face, changing my tune. Royals are mid. They just got to play the White Sox every time.
Come on.
I don't know what that says about the Cardinals though, because they got to play them 3 times and lost 2 of the games.
Played 3 games at Busch, and the White Sox took 2 of them. So I don't know what to say about that.